Good morning. Good morning. This is Sherita Herring coming to you live out of Arkansas here in the barnyard. Before I go any further, I just want to talk about the wonderful station WCEG, the radio station that I am on. You can watch us live on your smart TV, YouTube, WCEG network. We're the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak live into the community. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at WCEG_talk_radio and at WCEG network. Last but not least, as a disclaimer, the topics and the opinions on those on our show are me and my guests' ideas, and it does not reflect on the WCEG network. So thank you so much for your continued support. That being said, this is part 2 of the phenomenal part 1 show that I had with my dear, dear friend, George Folkes. And we talked about a whole lot of good stuff. But today I want to, some of you probably missed my very first show. So I just want to do a short introduction of my very special guest. As a former mentor of Spike Lee, George is a filmmaker himself. With he and Spike Lee attending Morehouse College, George also befriended Ginny Battle's youngest son, Glenn Battle. Now, who is Ginny Battle? And that's what we're going to talk about today, which he created a documentary about this wonderful lady after meeting both Ginny Battle and her husband. Folkes recalls interviewing and filming the Battles over a 6-year period. Flying from DC to Boston, he became convinced of his life's purpose to become a documentary filmmaker. Through his company, Gentle Drop Films, George's goals are to 1, bring unsung achievements to film, 2, produce films about individual families to preserve their legacies, and 3, to train and employ young filmmakers. And then finally, 4, he wants to entertain and teach through cinema. Please, please, please help me welcome my very special guest for our part 2 series, Mr. George Folkes.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning.
George, thank you so much for being on with me today for part 2. Part 1 was packed with information and we cut you off so quickly. So let's just start right in about your documentary about the great Ginny Battle. Who is she?
Well, Virginia T. Battle was the first Black employee of Congressman John F. Kennedy during his time in Boston. Miss Battle was the individual that was blessed because of the circle of Black professionals who the congressman associated with. And he ran with some Black heavyweights in the Boston area. The main individual that made this whole thing happen was Harold Vaughn. Harold Vaughn would be considered the power broker of Roxbury and was a dear friend to Senator Brooks of Massachusetts. And they had put together the VA in Roxbury and decided to go after some other lucrative things that they could do to influence the Black community. Mm-hmm. As a result of that circle that Harold Vaughn was in, that also associated with Kennedy, it was dropped that he was going to maybe consider running for president. And so it was said to the senator, it would be best if you had somebody Black on your staff. And at that time, dealing with the early 50s, there wasn't anybody on anybody's staff in New England. So Kennedy made history regionally, and then he made history in terms of dealing with the idea of potentially running for president. Ms. Battle was an A student. She had gone to a business college in the Boston area. And because of her excellent English skills and her being able to type over 100 words a minute, and we're not going to leave out the fact that she looked better than or equal to Dorothy Dandridge, that that put her in a position where she could impress people, but also, you know, she was the oldest of her siblings. So she had a certain kind of discipline and leadership in the Tabb family. And by the time she met Henry Battle, who was also born the same year, they all both were born in 1922.
Mm.
He was the oldest in his family. The two of them were able to come up with a formula in 1946 as a married couple that they believed would help them move forward.
Okay. I want to go back to something that you said in first starting getting on this journey. And you said that Mr. Vaughn suggested to Kennedy that he hire someone Black. Was that to also help with the Black vote? I mean, what was the reasoning when he said that?
Yeah, to help the Black vote, but also if you go back and look at the influence of Rose Kennedy, who I clearly believe is one of the great unsung Americans in the history of the United States. Rose
Mm-hmm.
Kennedy is special. Her father was the mayor of Boston, but Rose Kennedy's spirit, and of course, you know, she's behind the Paralympics and looking out for children with special needs.
Mm-hmm.
That ability to be inclusive, or that ability to say we need to look out for this population that we know has not been treated fair in America. I mean, if I'm gonna go to the White House, I need to be the beacon, you know, of goodness. I truly believe that once you see this film, you realize that Kennedy had what Maya Angelou called the greatest of all virtues is the virtue of courage. That if you don't have courage, you could have all those other skills on the planet, but it ain't gonna rock right until you get that courage.
Absolutely.
Kennedy had that courage.
Absolutely. Well, you know, speaking of courage, to even go into filmmaking, it must take that. George, have you always wanted to be a filmmaker?
Yeah. Yeah. When I used to watch the Oscars, and in my book, The Legend of General, I talk about the specific films that actually influenced me. And of course, Lawrence Arabia was one of the first films I ever saw in the Boogie Down with my sister. And I didn't fully understand the story, but I loved the cinematography and I loved the presence of the film on screen. And I always liked the idea of producing, because I always liked the idea of getting people to do something well and then allow them to celebrate that they were able to get that done. Teamwork to me is the hardest thing for human beings to master. It really is the hardest thing for human beings to master. One of my favorite mentors, or one of the favorite people that I admire as a coach, even though he never coached me, I didn't play for him or anything like that, but I followed John Wooden at UCLA, and he's the ticket. And his saying, when they asked him, when he won 10 national championships, they asked him, how did you get that done? And he said, other people are the key to your success. You are the key to your failure. I
Because if they get you in the door and then you can't hold your own, that's your own fault, right?
Well, in a matter of speaking, but you know, if you surround yourself with very talented people, then they're going to be the people that take you to the promised land, as Michael Jordan found out. And UCLA at that time won 10 national championships with some undefeated seasons mixed in there. So John Wooden was a master teacher and someone who understood, you know, other people are the key to your success. You're the key to your failure. And if you can keep your ego in life in check, my formula is simple. I always use my skill set and my ego to get tasks done, and then I give 100% of the credit to God.
Well, amen to that. Amen to that. So then to your film, you're in school, you're at Morehouse. You're doing what college kids do, not knowing that you're going to do this documentary on Miss Virginia Ginny Battle. What happened? How did you get there?
Well, the strangest thing was that my buddy Glenn, when we both lived in Southern California, would invite me because he had 4 children and a wife, and he knew I was single, and that Thanksgiving or Christmas, I might not, get that home cooked meal. So he would say, come ride with me in the van. And I would sit directly behind Glenn, and me and him could talk, in the van. Even though the kids and the wife were in the car, we could do our Morehouse thing and chat. And he would take me and he said, yo, when you get to my aunt's house, they cook really good. And I said, okay, well, I'm going to get my greedy on. South Bronx boogie down, y'all. New York City in the house. I'm going to do my thing. And
Uh-huh.
I would not go for first or second. I would go for thirds.
Mm-hmm.
And they was like, that boy could eat. That boy is greedy. And they remembered that I could eat. But they were very impressed, I guess, with my mind, because they told Glenn's father they thought I was brilliant. And when I met Glenn's father, Mr. Henry Battle, in Tennessee, he said to me, I wonder if you could tell my wife's story. And I was like, well, I'm not a writer, Mr. Battle. I'm a filmmaker. He said, well, could you make a movie about my wife? And I said, I could if I met her. And he said, well, um, would you like to come, to DC? And I said, when is her birthday? And he said to me, her birthday is October 17th, and my birthday is October 19th. So I was like, yeah, let me take that invitation. So I went to DC with my camera, didn't tell her, set it up in the living room. She was looking nice, and I started filming her. And we were just having a conversation. Then I stopped the camera, played it back, and she looked at the TV and she said, that looks nice.
About
And
how
later on
old
that,
was she, George, at that time?
that's hard. It's hard for me to remember, but I think she was in her 80s.
Wow.
Yeah, she was in her 80s. Yeah, they
Okay.
both were born the same year, as I said, 1922.
Mm-hmm.
But she enjoyed watching herself on the screen. And then her husband, later on that night, he winked at me to say, job well done. And she was in, she was in. And we filmed in 2009 and 2010. We filmed in DC. They were based out of DC. They're from
Mm-hmm.
Boston, but they're based out of DC. And then we filmed in West Palm Beach with Harold Vaughn. And then we filmed in Boston. Um,
Over how
so
long of a period?
that probably took about 2 years to get all that done. And then it sat because I was a full-time caregiver for my mother.
Mm.
And so I really couldn't work on it. And everybody was, concerned whether I was going to get the film done. And I was like, I'm a caregiver. I got to take care of mom. So she passed in 2014.
Mm.
And I was sitting there in Florida thinking about stuff I needed to do that I hadn't done. And one of the things was that I didn't get the film done. I had looked at it, but I didn't get it done.
Yeah.
So I sat down, bought a Mac computer, taught myself how to edit Final Cut Pro, and
Mm-hmm.
then decided all at that same time at the end of 2014 that the film needed to be screened in 2015.
Mm.
And it just so happened, I thought it should be at a very prestigious location, and I was able to get the Jimmy Carter Library. And when they called me, they said, Mr. Folkes, we'd be honored to screen your film here at the Jimmy Carter Library. That's when I knew God was in it. And that January, the way I make films is I do what's called a rough cut, which means I just put it together and it's just rough. And then
Mm-hmm.
I go into what I call a director's cut, which means I'm looking at it as a director and I'm getting closer to what I believe the vision is. And then my
Mm.
last phase is my, final version, which is this is it. I'm done. And
Mm-hmm.
usually when
Mm-hmm.
I'm done, if I'm working on something and I'm done, I'm done. I don't really go back and mess with it. I leave it
Yeah.
alone.
Yeah. Yeah. I keep hearing a little bit of static. I think it's my mic doing something. Well, so George, when you were talking about and you learned the editing yourself, um, that's probably why you want to also train young filmmakers or starting filmmakers, huh? Because of the hurdles that you had to overcome yourself.
Well, I'm independent. I've been out here professionally since 1978, and my whole
Mm-hmm.
journey has been independent. I come from island people. I come from people who are from the Caribbean. My mother's father was from St. Croix. He married a woman from Antigua. My my father's mother is from St. Anne's Parish in Jamaica, where Marcus Garvey's from, and she married a man from Barbados. And my roots are definitely independent Caribbean people that don't take no nonsense from nobody, man. And so, that's who I am. That's where I come from. And of course, I am a proud South Bronx, New York City trained youth who always knew that you can do things your way, regardless of whether other people like it, but you can do it your way and do
Mm-hmm.
it well at a very high
Mm-hmm.
level. And because
Mm-hmm.
I had the training, that allowed me to do that. When it comes to young people, I did train people in filmmaking, back in the day. And I don't necessarily focus on that today, but I'm interested in the Black community, specifically getting rid of this whole idea of not understanding that we need to train people in the area of producing. Producing is the skill set that we need to change many of the ills in our culture, in our community. You must master the art of producing. And if you master that, the whole interaction with other cultures changes, because now you're on top of your game and you're bringing good ideas to the table and you're executing. And when
Okay.
you look at a farmer, you're looking at a producer.
Mm-hmm.
A farmer is a producer.
Right. Right.
So so
Excuse me.
that's the key for me at this retired stage at 68. It's not about teaching people to play with cameras and stuff like that. I'm at a
Yes.
different level. I'm talking about the art of producing and what it would take for you to produce. And it doesn't require any equipment. It requires an ability to think and execute.
So you're teaching the skills that happened before you even get to the camera, before you even get to producing. There are certain skill sets that you must also possess to be
Yeah,
for a success. Now,
yeah.
George, I have a question. Now, we're talking again about the Ginny Battle documentary, and you would like for more people, obviously, to see this film. And so you're creating more opportunities for individuals to bring this to their universities or whatever location that they would like to. Is there going to be a cost?
They just have to pay for the expense to bring us to show the film. There is no fee attached to the film itself or to the director. In honor of John F. Kennedy, this film will always be free to the nation. It's a private film shared publicly,
Right.
and it's designed to help you to appreciate, one, the 35th president of the United States, two, this incredible couple that was married 69 years, and three, this woman that happened to be in the right place at the right time, that got an opportunity to work for a congressman, a senator, and then the president of the United States. And then she went on to work with some very big name folks who were in the federal government. And of course, she ended her career working for the Department of Housing,
Mm-hmm.
which we hope we'll get a chance to show the film to the Department of Housing.
Ah, ah.
Maybe
Well, now,
even the White House. If they can see the beauty and the context of the film, that maybe even the White House would love to see it. My dream is to see her get two things: one, a library, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom, because I
hmm,
think she's a trailblazer on the Democratic side as the first secretary to work in the White House that was
hmm,
Black.
hmm.
And she was a class act.
Now, George, give us a glimpse. No, no, I'm sorry, my dog's right here.
Okay.
Give us a glimpse into the documentary, because you've told me about it. You've talked even about this great speech as far as President Kennedy, but the part where about Ginny Battle, what she talks about in this film, why this is done around her. Give us a
Yeah,
glimpse of that.
excuse me, one of the hardest things was to figure out, how do you tell a story? But when you tell a story well, anybody can get it.
Okay.
I know it sounds crazy, and I'm in my New York state of mind, with my celebration of the new police commissioner of New York, who happens to be from the Bronx,
Mm-hmm.
Edwin Tafan from Parkchester and the Boogie Down. Um, I I truly believe when I watch Columbo or I watch Kojak. Kojak's one of my favorites, and it's storytelling. And so, how do you tell a story that will work? Well, in this film, everything centers around her, and every chapter in the film is about her. So, her is a dominant word that's used in the film in order to take you through the 55-minute journey about her. But if you watch it and then you realize she had an impact on Kennedy, because when you hear Kennedy's voice and the way he explains his position, which I will say this to you as a Morehouse man, Kennedy's speech in my film is more powerful than Dr. King's speech on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And America, once they hear this speech, which they've never heard, the fact is that Medgar Evers died the next day in his driveway, because this speech was delivered on June the 11th, and Medgar Evers was killed on June the 12th.
Hmm.
And the speech is 13 minutes. That to hear an American president speak the way he spoke in 63, nobody has spoken like that since he did it. And only two presidents have ever spoken like that in America, Lincoln and Kennedy, and they both were assassinated.
Wow. Do you think that's why, George, we haven't heard that speech?
Yeah, because I had to go to the Miller Institute, the Miller Library at the University of Virginia, and I stumbled on it because I wanted the film to close with something that was meaningful. Even though it was a family film about her and her husband, I needed to take the story to a global level. And as a filmmaker, I love Ken Burns' work. I really adore his work. And when you're closing something out, you want to find that thing that's going to make that story really pop. Mm-hmm. And when I discovered this speech and shared it with Glenn was laying on the floor at his brother's house, Lyle's, and he was like, "Wow." Huh. As a Morehouse man, we clicked automatically as soon as I played it for him. Then, Lyle's, was able to see the bigger picture. And I believe everyone who's ever seen the film, when you hear that speech in that film, you're touched for life.
Oh, I'm sure. Excuse me. I got to say, I keep getting ready to cough. I'm not feeling too well today, George, so I'm sorry. I
understand. We with you.
1 second. So, George, this amazing film, this unprecedented speech, for, again, anyone, as far as with a location, can bring you and this film to their location, and purposely you want to keep this film free to the public. How would someone reach you to know more?
Well, they can, we keep our stuff we've been in it a long time, so we keep our stuff very simple. You can reach out to us at 678-913-4582, and that will put you in contact with Gentle Drop Cinema. And from there, we can make the arrangements and decide, what's the best way to deliver it to your particular group. Because of our past history, having been all over America at the institutions of higher learning, we've been in a position where bringing or traveling or doing something for a particular audience can be a la carte. We can take it to Kirksville, We can take it to Cape Girardeau. It really doesn't matter. We can go to Los Angeles. We can even go all the way up to, Bowdoin College in Maine. We've been all across the country. So we're very equipped at making sure that it will satisfy your specific audience. And that's a skill that I can offer now from years of travel across the nation with our one-man show.
Mm-hmm. Good. Well, I am so excited about that. George, we've got about 5 more minutes. What else would you like to disclose to my audience? Oh, including that you have toured how many HBCUs with your one-man show?
I never did count how many HBCUs, but we've been to 50 universities across 23 states and the District of Columbia, and we have been invited to 5 of those 50. We were able to be invited back. So it wound up being a total of 55, tours across the nation at the top institutions. And we really enjoyed doing that because we created the show, we owned the show, we toured the show, and we managed the show.
And your one-man show covers what? What are your topics?
It covers the beauty of the one-man show was we help men and women to understand each other. We explain to boys why you should understand girls, and we explain to girls why you should understand boys. And with the title of the show at the time, in 1986, putting women in their place beside their men, we left out a little word because we were really talking about putting women in their place beside their little men, but we didn't want to tell you about the little one because then you would have got the end of the show before you saw the show. So we left that word out, and that agitated people, but it was a great marketing ploy because the men wanted us to come to campus to straighten out the women. The women said, bring him because we want to see what he gonna do. And it was self-marketing. It was almost a genius kind of move. And I came up with the first part, and Vernon, the director, came up with the second part, and we put the two together with a young lady named Patrice who was working with us, and we thought the title worked, and we put it out there across America, and America loved it.
Well, George, we're getting close to the close of the show. I want to thank you so much for being my very special guest. And of course, I've talked about this before. I definitely will bring you back to our show. And I can't wait to see how this takes off as far as bringing your Ginny Battle documentary to various locations. For those of you that are already connected on my Facebook page, we do have a documentary link there where you can read more about the Ginny Battle story and about Mr. George Folkes with his short bio. And we will have a page there, a sign-up page where you can enter your information and submit it. And that way, George will also receive you wanting to bring the documentary to your location, to your city. And so, George, any last thoughts?
Well, I think, I'm wearing my New York gear because I want to celebrate Benjamin Ward. I want to celebrate the legacy of Benjamin Ward, who was the first police chief of New York City. I want to celebrate Edwin Caban, who is now the current 47th police chief of New York City. Shouts out to Eric Adams, the honorable mayor of the city of New York. In the summertime, I get in this New York state of mind that I just love my hometown. And because Edwin Caban is from the Bronx, from the Parkchester area, to achieve being the New York City police commissioner is a moment in history where all of the good kids who grow up in the Boogie Down and in other boroughs who want to stay on the right track, that you can wind up being a very positive and important person in American history by staying on the track of being a good kid. To all the good kids out there, I want you to know, don't feel any need, any pressure from the other side to join them. Just stay on the track of being a good kid. I was a good kid in the Boogie Down, never got in trouble. And so Edwin Caban is one of those kids today, who I admire. and sitting in the top position of the New York City police force is just something I celebrate. And many of us who grew up in New York know that to hold that position is something of great respect.
Well, thank you again, Mr. George Folkes, for being on the show with us today. And I look forward to having you on the show again.
All right. Have a good day.
This is Sherita Herring again with your show, Beverly Hills to Barnyard, on the WCEG network. I want to thank you for tuning in. For those of you that will be seeing the recording later, thank you for also coming on, listening to the show. Just want to make a quick announcement. Go to my website at philanthropyalliance.org to stay connected. Sign up for the free grant information and other information that we send out. It'll pop up on the page as soon as you get there. Also, to stay connected to Mr. George Folkes, click on the documentary link and we will have a submit page there so that you can bring him to your city with this great, phenomenal documentary, The Ginny Battle Story. This is Sherita J. Herring coming to you live from Beverly Hills to Barnyard. Have an absolutely phenomenal day.